Daf Yomi, Tractate, Menachos, 46b. Top of the page, just a few words into it. The words V'im Tim Salomar. V'im Tim Salomar, Tenufa Enois Eziko. Hevi Lechem Chvosim, V'hunufo, V'arvan Lechem, V'hevi Lechem Achel. Ois V'lechem Ton Tenufa, Oin Ton Tenufa. And if you say that waving does not establish a bond between the loaves and the sheep, then one can raise the following dilemma. If one brought loaves and sheep, and they were waved, and then the loaves were lost, and he brought other loaves to replace the original loaves, does that second set of loaves require waving with the sheep, as it has not yet been waved? Or does it not require waving, as the accompanying sheep have already been waved with the original loaves, and the sheep are subject in the verse that serves as the source of the requirement of waving? See Leviticus 23:20. Rabbi Yirmiyah clarifies the dilemma. In a case where the sheep were lost after the waving, do not raise the dilemma, as in this case they certainly require waving, because the primary obligation of waving is mentioned with respect to the sheep, and these sheep have not yet been waved. When should we raise the dilemma? You should raise it in a case where the loaves were lost after the waving. Now I remember this. We had this teku also, and let's see here. This should be teku 241. Teku Reish Mem Aleph. Okay. Teku Reish Mem Aleph. Teku Reish Mem Aleph. Let's see. Teku Reish Mem Aleph is Menachot 46b. That's correct. That's where we are right now. And this was on Sunday, February 15th. Teku Reish Mem Aleph. Okay, anyway, the 241st teku here. Rabbi Yirmiyah clarifies the dilemma. In the case where the sheep were lost after a waving, do not raise a dilemma. As in this case, they certainly require waving, because the primary obligation of waving is mentioned with respect to the sheep, and these sheep have not yet been waved. When should you raise the dilemma? You should raise it in the case where the loaves were lost after the waving. The Aliba de Benanas lo tibaylach de Amar Kivasimiko Kiti Baylach Aliba de Rabbi Kiva de Amar Lechem Ikar Mai. And according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas, who holds that failure to sacrifice a sheep prevents one from sacrificing the loaves, do not raise the dilemma, as he says that the sheep are primary. Consequently, since the sheep have been waved, there is no need to repeat the waving. When should you raise the dilemma? Raise it according to the opinion of Rabbi Kiva, who holds that failure to bring the loaves prevents one from sacrificing the sheep, as he says that the loaves are primary according to his opinion. What is the halacha concerning the loaves that are brought as replacements? Kiva lechamika boy tenufa oidinva kiva nematiran didei kiva simninu loitzorich tenufa teku. On the other hand, one might say that since the loaves are primary and this set of loaves has not yet been waved, it requires waving. Or on the other hand, perhaps one should say that since its permitting factors are the sheep and they were already waved, the new set of loaves does not require waving. The Gemara concludes that the question shall stand unresolved. Amar le Abai Rove Maishna Shnei Kavasim Dimikachi Lechem Umeakvi Maishna Shiva Kavasim Par Elim Dimikachi Lechem Lo Meakvi. Abai said to her, what is different about the two sheep brought as peace offerings together with the two loaves of Shavuot? Such as, just said, their slaughter sanctifies the loaves. See 47a. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, failure to sacrifice them once they have been slaughtered prevents the bringing of the loaves. And what is different about the 7 sheep, the bull, and the 2 rams brought on Shavuot as an additional offering, such that their slaughter does not sanctify the loaves, and failure to sacrifice them does not prevent the bringing of the loaves. Amar le Hoyel Yehuzkekuz Zelazeb Tinufa. Rava said to Abaya, the reason for the distinction is because the 2 sheep and the loaves brought as peace offerings are bound to each other through the waving. This is not so with regard to the additional offerings, which are not waved with the loaves. The Gemara challenges, but in the case of a thanks offering and its loaves, which are not waved together, they are not bound to each other through waving, and nevertheless the slaughter of the animal offering sanctifies the loaves, and failure to sacrifice the animal offering prevents the bringing of the loaves. This indicates that the waving is not the critical factor. Rather, the reason for the distinction is that the 2 sheep brought as peace offerings are comparable to a thanks offering. Just as a thanks offering is a peace offering, so too the 2 sheep are also a peace offering. Consequently, just as the slaughter of the thanks offering sanctifies the accompanying loaves, and failure to sacrifice the animal prevents one from bringing the loaves, the same applies with regard to the sheep peace offerings and loaves of Shavuot. Mi dami hasum leka zvachim achlini v'hadadei v'hadei hachdadi ika zvachim achlini v'hadei lika chuhani v'hani. The Gemara responds, are the 2 sheep of Shavuot and the thanks offering really comparable? There, in the case of the thanks offering, there are no other animal offerings brought with it. But here, in the case of the offerings brought on Shavuot, where there are other animals brought with it, let these peace offerings and those additional offerings sanctify the loaves. Why is it only the sheep brought as peace offerings that sanctify the loaves? Elik ayal nozil. Mal ayal nozir afal gavdi ikas vachim achini. Rather, the reason for the distinction is that the 2 sheep brought as peace offerings are comparable to a Nazarite's ram, which is sacrificed as a peace offering when he completes his term of Nazariteship, in addition to a lamb that he sacrifices as a burnt offering, a female lamb that he brings then as a sin offering, and the Nazarite loaves, see Numbers 6:14 through 15. Just as in the case of a Nazarite's a ram, even though there are other offerings brought with it, nevertheless is the slaughter of the peace offering that sanctifies the Nazarite loaves, and not the slaughter of anything else. Here too, the halacha is no different, and it is specifically the slaughter of the peace offerings that sanctifies the loaves. The Lamed she'asal ba chova le'ayal u'shchitat ayil mikad shan lefichach shachato shelo lishmo lo kadsho halechem. The Gemara asks, and there, in the case of the offerings of the Nazarite, from where do we derive that it is specifically the slaughter of the peace offering that sanctifies the loaves? The Gemara answers, this is, as it is taught in Braita concerning the verse stated, with regard to the offerings of the Nazarite. And he shall offer the ram for a sacrifice of peace offerings to the Lord with the basket of unleavened bread, Numbers 6:17. This verse, which connects the ram and the loaves, teaches that the basket of the Nazarite loaves comes as an obligation with the ram, which is a peace offering, and the slaughter of the ram sanctifies the loaves. Therefore, if the slaughter was unfit, for example, in a case where he slaughters the ram not for the sake of a peace offering, the loaves were not sanctified. Tanu Rabbanan she'lechem and boys mipnei asbon yunufu. Usil ba'atzuvasan yedu leveis hasreifo. The Mishnah teaches that according to Rabbi Akiva, failure to sacrifice the 2 sheep brought as peace offerings does not prevent sacrifice to the loaves. Consequently, if there are no sheep, the loaves are sacrificed by themselves. If there are no sheep, the loaves are sacrificed by themselves. Concerning this, the sages taught in a Braita, in a case where the 2 loaves are brought by themselves, they should be waived. They should then be left overnight so that their form decays, meaning they become disqualified, and they are then brought out to the place of burning like any disqualified offering. Manashach. Oy lechila asyan lechilnu, or lesrif asyan lesrifon lealtar. The Gemara challenges, whichever way you look at it, this is difficult. If the loaves are brought and weighed in order to be eaten, let the priest eat them rather than burn them. And if they are brought to be burned, let the priest burn them immediately. Why are they left overnight? So that they can undergo a decay of form and become disqualified. Rabbah said, actually the loaves are brought and weighed in order to be eaten. Nevertheless, the sage instituted a rabbinic decree that they may not be eaten out of concern lest the sheep become available to the nation the following year. And they might say, didn't we eat the loaves without the accompanying sheep last year? Now too we will eat the loaves without the sacrificing sheep. Havi kvasim inu shayan nafshayu hashadika kvasim hudishayu. And they will not know that the reason that they were permitted to eat the loaves without sacrificing sheep last year is that there were no sheep, and therefore the 2 loaves permitted themselves to be eaten, meaning they could be eaten without the sacrifice of the sheep. But now that there are sheep, it is the sacrifice of the sheep that permits the loaves to be eaten. Since loaves brought without sheep are fit by Torah law and may not be eaten due to rabbinic decree, they may not be burned until they become disqualified by remaining overnight. Amar Rabba mina amina le aditnan Amar Rav Yehuda he'id ben buchli biavne kol kohen shishoikel enechoite. Okay. Where were we? Rabbah said, from where do I say this? What is the source of my statement? It is, as we learned in the Mishnah in Shkalim 1:4, Rabbi Yehuda said that Ben Bukhri testified before the sages in Yavne, any priest who contributes his half shekel is not considered a sinner, despite the fact that he is not obligated to do so. Amar lo Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai lochi ela kol kohen she'eno shoikel choite ela shekohanim dorshim mikra zeh le'atzman. Rabbi Yehuda added that Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai said to Ben Bukhri, this is not the case. Rather, any priest who does not contribute his half shekel is considered a sinner, as they are obligated in this mitzvah like all other Jews. But the priests who do not contribute the half shekel interpret this following verse to their own advantage, in order to excuse themselves from the mitzvah. V'chol minchas kohen klil tiyeh lo teochel, klil tiyeh lo teochel. Hoil v'oimer, shti alechem alechem aponim shelanu hein, heich nechalim. The verse states, in every meal offering of the priest shall be wholly made to smoke. It shall not be eaten. Leviticus 6:16. Those priests claim as follows. Since the Omer offering and the 2 loaves, meaning the public offering of 2 loaves from the new wheat brought on the festival of Shavuot, and the showbread placed on the table in the sanctuary each Shabbat, which are all meal offerings, are ours, then if we contribute half shekels, we will have partial ownership of these meal offerings as they are purchased with the half shekels. How then can they be eaten? They would be regarded as priests' meal offerings, which must be wholly burned. Hani shelechem echidami ilim bevoyes im hazevach al tu toide v'rachmami lo Rabbah discusses this Mishnah. What are the circumstances of these two loaves? If we say that the Mishnah is referring to a case where they are brought the animal offering, meaning the two sheep brought as peace offerings, why shouldn't the loaves be eaten? Is that to say that priests cannot volunteer to bring a thanks offering and its loaves and eat them, just as the loaves that accompany a thanks offering may be eaten even if brought by a priest? The same halacha should apply to the two loaves when they accompany sheep brought as peace offerings. Rather, is it not referring to a case where the two loaves are brought by themselves, and the Mishnah teaches that the priests claimed how can they be eaten? Apparently, in principle, the loaves come to be eaten, but due to rabbinic decree, they're not eaten, and they're left overnight until their form decays. I think it'd be fine if it's just left overnight. It's not too bad. One night, it's not going to decay it. But whatever, okay. Abaye said to Rav in response, actually the Mishnah can be interpreted as referring to loaves brought with the animal offering, and therefore it does not prove that when two loaves are brought by themselves they may be eaten. And as for that which is difficult for you based on the case of a thanks offering as loaves, the resolution is that the loaves of a thanks offering are not called a meal offering, and therefore even when a priest brings a thanks offering, the loaves may be eaten. By contrast, the two loaves of Shavuot are called a meal offering, as it is stated with regard to the two loaves. Also, in the day of the first fruits, when you bring a new meal offering to the Lord, Numbers 28:26. Therefore, the priests held that if they would donate half shekels, the two loaves would not be permitted to be eaten. Okay. Rav Yosef Amar, Lo'ilam l'sreifa asyan, v'hainu time l'loi srafinan, lefi she'ein sofen kodshim b'yom tov. Rav Yosef said a different response to Rabbah's proof. Actually, when the two loaves of Shavuot are brought by themselves, they come to be burned, meaning they may not be eaten. And this is the reason that we do not burn them until the following day. It is because one may not burn consecrated items on a festival. Amar le'abaya midami hasam lav mitzvasan bekach hachad mitzvasan bekach lisrefinu midei dahavi par yisor shlem yiborim. Abai said to Rav Yosef, is the burning of the two loaves comparable to the burning of the other consecrated items, such that the loaves may not be burned right away for this reason? There, in the case of other consecrated items, this is not their mitzvah, meaning they are supposed to be eaten, but if they become disqualified, they must be burned. Conversely, here, in the case of the two loaves of Shavuot that are brought by themselves, where this is their mitzvah, meaning they are supposed to be burned, let the priest burn them on the festival, just as is the halacha in the case of the bull and the goat of Yom Kippur, which are burned on Yom Kippur despite the fact that it is a festival. Ela Amrav Yosef Gzer Hashem Yizamnu Lahem Kivasim Lachar Mikan Amrei Abaye Tinach Kosban Nakarasan Labasar Hachi Lisaferinu Mai Tubar Turasan Nami Dikatani Turasa Karosam. Rather, Rav Yosef said the reason the loaves are left overnight is due to rabbinic decree not to burn them immediately, lest sheep become available to the nation afterward, say later in the day, in which case the loaves could be waved with them and then eaten. Abai said to Rav Yosef, that works out well for the entire time period that they may be sacrificed, until the afternoon daily offering the sacrifice. But after that, let them burn the loaves immediately and not wait till the next day. Rav Yosef replied, what is the meaning of the phrase in the Brayta that teaches that the loaves must be left until their form decays? It means that they must be left until the form of their sacrifice has passed, meaning until after the time when the sheep could be sacrificed. Rava said that there is a different response to Rava's proof. When the two loaves of Shavuot are brought by themselves by Torah law, they come to be eaten, but due to rabbinic decree, they are not eaten and left overnight until they are disqualified. The reason for the decree is due to that which Rabbah said, meaning due to the concern that the following year sheep will be available, and nevertheless the nation will bring 2 loaves without sheep. But the proof that by Torah law the loaves may be eaten is not from Rabbah's line of reasoning, meaning the Mishnah in Shkalim. Rather, it is from a verse. Yamar Rava mina minala. Tichsiv mimoshosechem tavilechem tenufa v'goyim yom bikurim Hashem. Ma bikurim v'nei asman. Av shtei lechem v'nei asman. Umina. Ma bikurim lechilo. Av shtei lechem nami lechilo. And Rava said, by way of explanation, from where do I state this halacha? From the fact that it is written with regard to the 2 loaves. You shall bring out of your dwellings 2 loaves, a waving of 2/10 part of an ephah. They shall be of fine flour. They shall be baked with leaven for first fruits to the Lord. Leviticus 23:17. Just as first fruits are brought by themselves without an accompanying animal offering, so the 2 loaves are brought by themselves when there are no sheep available. And learn from this comparison to first fruits that just as first fruits are brought to be eaten, so too the loaves are also brought to be eaten, even in the absence of the sheep, brought as peace offerings.